So content for me has always been, especially in the B2B world, how do I drive value for somebody before they are using my product, right? How do I make sure that they know who I am, make sure that they know that I am a brand that they can trust, make sure they understand what it is that we do, and then eventually get them into my sales funnel and make a lot of money.
Welcome to the Marketing Academy Podcast by GCMO, where in every episode we sit down with a marketing expert to deep dive into a hot topic shaping the industry. I'm Yitzy Tannenbaum. Let's get started. Welcome to the Marketing Academy Podcast by GCMO. I'm Yitzy Tannenbaum, and today's episode is super fun. We have Eytan Buchman, who is the rock star CMO of Freightos and all-around marketing leader. So I'm excited to pick your brain for a few minutes today.
Pumped to be here. Thanks.
Maybe before we jump into things, I think we have a super interesting topic that I honestly chose because I don't fully know the answers to it. So I'm hoping to get it out of your brain. But maybe before we jump into it, do you want to tell us a little bit about you and how you ended up in the crazy world of marketing?
Yeah, sure. I market because I can't do anything else, I guess would be the quick answer. So as you said, Eytan Buchman, I'm the chief marketing officer at a company called Freightos, trade under the NASDAQ, ticker is CRGO. I have always been interested in storytelling, and specifically, which is such a generic answer, terrible story to tell already. But I think the part that animates me is how do you find the right message for the right person and just like custom tailor that? And I think that's really, there's an experiment that I remember from my psych degree, obviously, market because I don't know what else to do, when I studied psych because I didn't know what else to study. And this experiment that always has resonated with me, which is you have one person who taps their pen on the table and tries to tap out a tune, right? So it could be like happy birthday or whatever it is. And then you have somebody else on the other side of the table who tries to identify the tune. You ask the person who's tapping, how confident are you that the person on the other side of the table will be able to identify the tune? And they always rank it high. They always say like, oh yeah, it's so easy. It's like 80%, 90%, they'll get it. And in reality, the person on the other side of the table gets it like 10% of the time, 5% of the time. It's just guessing. And for me, that resonated and it stuck with me for a very long time. Only thing I remember from the degree, because so frequently what you say is not what people hear.
Right.
And you assume that people get it. And that idea of like not just saying what I want to say, but saying what I want to say so the person on the other side understands is the challenge. And that, yeah, I've just like been like sticking with that ever since.
So I think that there's a lot of similarities between psychology and marketing. Because what we do as marketers is we try to deeply understand our customer, our ICP, and then build the marketing for that person. But if you don't like really understand the deep motivations of your persona, then the marketing doesn't hit as like seamlessly as one would hope.
I couldn't agree more. And I think this is also, especially in B2B, where I think so many people go wrong, is they don't understand who they're speaking to. And I don't know if you're allowed to curse here, but just like get on the fucking phone. Just like call up your ICP and like find 10 people and just speak to them, reach out to them on LinkedIn and just like, hey, I'm not selling anything. I just want to talk to you for 10 minutes. And the insights that you get from those 10-minute conversations are so much better than the SEO insights and any listening tools that you have. And no one does it. And it drives me nuts.
I had a CMO who would make every single one of his employees speak to 5 customers a quarter. And there was a little report, like a Google form that you'd have to fill out that, hey, I actually spoke to the customer. These are the insights. And I thought it was genius.
It's amazing. And it's not, I mean, the lazy answer is like, yeah, listen to sales calls, but it's not the same questions.
Right.
And it's not the same discipline and nobody does it. And it drives me nuts. It's such an easy way to like get up the scale and figure out who you're talking to and how do you tell them the right message.
It's also that sparkle in their eye when you actually speak to a person and you see them getting excited about something or not excited about something that you thought would excite them. So I love those kind of conversations.
I mean, I'll just like, there's also like a real ROI factor in that when you build that one-on-one relationship, leaning into them afterwards for a case study or for a video interview or for getting them to speak on a podcast or something, it just like keeps them giving and giving. And you end up building these like mega champions that are marketing champions, not sales champions, and are not mediated through a sales organization that has different KPIs.
And I will plug the Marketing Academy episode with Adi Barlev about customer marketing and how to use your customers as a resource for marketing. But I agree, most marketers, and I think especially here in Israel, have never spoken to a customer or very infrequently. So that's super important. Now, completely unrelated to what we plan to talk today. I think the topic today is super interesting because I want to talk to you a little bit about the shift marketers have to do or go through when it comes to content now that we have AI. Essentially, it's become the barrier of entry to create content almost is non-existent. A child can write a blog about some complex cybersecurity issue or moving freights across the Atlantic, right? Like anyone could write a blog about anything in 30 seconds. So I guess I want to talk to you today about how do we use AI in a way that we're creating content that matters and that makes a difference, that resonates, that people actually want to listen to, because there's so much noise and there's so much content. I'm people talk about people when someone wins the lottery, many times they just blow through all their cash. When you get so much good, people don't know how to deal with it. So I wanted to pick your brain on how should we approach content marketing in the age of these chats and AI?
It's a big question. Yeah, I guess
We have some
buckle up here. Yeah, exactly. So the way that I would approach this is first stepping back a little bit and asking ourselves, like, what is content marketing? Because the more I think about it, the less I think that it's a separate or isolated discipline, and it's more an asset that feeds every single part of your marketing organization, right? Whether you're looking at performance, even if you're looking at field marketing, the content that you have there and the insights that you have there ends up driving your entire pipeline, right? So content for me has always been, especially in the B2B world, how do I drive value for somebody before they are using my product, right? How do I make sure that they know who I am? Make sure that they know that I am a brand that they can trust, make sure they understand what it is that we do, and then eventually get them into my sales funnel and make a lot of money. And that bar has been pretty high. I think if you go back 6 or 7 years already, it's not just AI. It's been easier and easier and easier to create content. It's been easier to research, and it's been easier to game the system to try to get your content to rank, right? With like SEO or performance marketing,
Right.
you can buy your way to the eyeballs usually. And as a whole, I kind of think over the past 10 years, every single person on the internet, i.e. every single person, has developed this kind of like automated defense system to prevent them from reading crap. And that's only getting like more important, and they're building more and more defenses. And I assume, and I think the numbers back this up, people are actually reading less. They're listening to fewer podcasts. They're reading fewer newsletters. They're Googling less. I mean, even when you go into Google, into Gemini, and you run deep research and you get this like long, this huge contract, I don't know, there's like, 15 pages. No one reads that, right? You go to deep research and then you copy it and you post it back into Gemini and you're like, hey, summarize this. Like we do not want to read anything anymore because we are being suffused by content. And that makes the bar that much higher. So it's not like content has changed. It's not like the content game has changed. It's just you need to be that much better. And if it used to be that you needed to be 2x and then you need to be 10x, now you need to be like 1,000x in order to get in front of the right people and build up that trust and own that relationship. And that for me is like the most fundamental shift.
Right. That's a fair point. I'm trying to think when the last time I read an ebook or like a long document. Very rarely. Like even when I'll read a blog, I'll skim it. I'll look at the like category 3 reasons why this and this fails, or 5 places to visit in this and this city.
But I think you're unique there. Who's reading blogs now? Like no one's going to a blog roll. What do they call it? Like a Tumblr? Like nobody's going to like the archive or category page of a blog and saying like, I wonder what this company thinks about insights looking into 2026. Like nobody's doing that. That's not how we consume content. Somebody shares a link with you.
Right.
And then you read an article in a best case scenario. But like nobody's subscribing to an RSS feed. Like who
No,
does
that I won't do. But if I'm looking to buy a pair of headphones, and I'll Google top headphones for 2026, and then I'll click on whatever comes up and I'll look at the top 4 recommended headphones, and then I'll go to YouTube and maybe some guy will review headphones there, and then I'll make my choice. So I still do research, and I still use content to get that research. So I wouldn't say content is dead.
Not at all. Not at all. I'll say my take on that headphone research thing. I'm a compulsive buyer of headphones. So I have way too many headphones. I only have 2 ears.
What do you recommend though?
I have them all. I don't know. They all suck. But, and maybe this will like inform a little bit of what my approach here is. I don't Google. I'll go to Wirecutter.
Okay.
Right. Like I have my source of like, who do I trust?
Right.
Who's built up the brand authority for me and who has expertise? And I'll go to them, I'll go to Google and I'll search, like the site domain search, like site:/wirecutter.com space headphones. And that'll search on Wirecutter's website to find mentions of headphones. And I'll just find it there. And I trust them.
Right.
And I read them because I trust them. And it becomes so important. And you're not going to build trust from a Google search. Everybody knows that Google's like stuffed full of crap.
So would you argue a brand should build themselves to be that voice and the authority in their domain? So in your example, do you try to build your brand as the authority in freights and transportation?
I would argue that building credibility is the most important step to getting content consumed. And this is not just a B2B thing. Like if you think about how do we consume news, right? So first of all, it's not just about the brand, it's about the person. So more people, somebody, if you're old school, if you're a CNN person, right, you're watching Anderson Cooper. You're not tuning into CNN. If you're the New York Times person, you're reading Thomas Friedman. You're not reading the New York Times typically, although there's a veneer of credibility if you swing that way. So I think like that brand and that human credibility is incredibly important. And that's where influencer culture and that's where newsletters are popping up from. It's because we found somebody that we believe we can trust and we go all in on that. And that's 100% what we try to do. We try to build up not just individual human expertise, which I think everybody who's doing founder-led growth or anybody who is posting on LinkedIn religiously is leaning into as well. But we also try to build that same veneer of credibility and that same general brand aura by creating content that we genuinely believe informs and making sure it gets in front of the right people so they trust us. And building that trust is a precursor. You need to do that before you create any actual like real deep content, especially down funnel content.
So let's double click on building that trust, because I assume a lot of our listeners are looking to do that. How do I start building trust? Is it thought leadership pieces?
So for me right now, content and the trust for content comes down to three core like foundational elements. So I've been using ADD as the acronym for myself to just remember them. For the first one is authenticity, right? You need to have an actual person, an actual human behind it in order to trust it. There's companies that can do without that, but it's so difficult to do, right? If you're a Google and you put something out, then people are going to believe it. But you need right now, especially for startups, especially for growing companies, you need to have the human out front and center.
Well, when you say human, it's an actual individual, right?
I believe that it's so much easier to build that relationship with an actual individual. And it doesn't need to be somebody within the company. We already talked about customers before. Making sure that you believe that it's a real person on the other side of the camera. It could be a customer. It could be a thought leader within the organization. It could be a thought leader outside of the organization. But as soon as I, as Freightos, have somebody else from within the industry who is trusted, I'm borrowing some of that credibility and I'm borrowing some of that authenticity.
Right.
And it means that people are going to listen because they know that it's just not AI generic slop.
It's interesting. Probably the number one thing that comes up in every episode of this podcast is making the CEO and giving them a voice.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that no matter who the company is, it's like people find that giving the CEO a voice is super important.
I think CEO for early stage company is really important. I've evolved, like our thinking has definitely evolved beyond only the CEO.
Okay.
I think that identifying, you want to have 5 or 6 different subject matter experts. And you want to very, very deliberately build up the authenticity and the trust that comes from them. So that's my first pillar is just authenticity.
Wait, so before you go to the second, I do want to ask, because I think, again, it's very easy to create content on any chat. I think there's an element of authenticity that is very raw, and that it feels to me that it wasn't created by a chat. Can you talk a little bit about what authentic content looks like versus chat content?
So I'm actually a believer that you can use AI to create personal content, and I lean into it a lot. I've spent a lot of time, for most marketers that have spent a lot of time creating their own personal content over the past couple of years, you need surprisingly few data points of, take 5 or 6 articles that you wrote and throw it into a frontier model, right? Whether it's like, Gemini 3.5 Pro or Claude Opus, like throw it in there and ask it to write your style guide and ask to come up with your idiosyncrasies and ask for it to come up with your examples. And it'll be surprisingly good. In some places, I sometimes find that like AI out Eytans me. Like it just like does a better job at getting my tone in some places.
So you're confident enough to use the chats to represent your personal voice or the
Yeah,
voice of that person.
100%. I don't think that I think my writing journey starts and ends with me.
Right.
But I think an increasingly large portion of the middle is being taken up by AI, and
That's
it's
amazing.
really interesting to see how that changes. I I don't think that AI needs to lean on sorry, I don't believe that authenticity needs to lean on the crutch of like, here's a picture of my kid and it was so fun taking them to X, Y, or Z. Like, I don't think you need to do that. I don't think you need to get out there and personal and vulnerable as much.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it helps sometimes, but I'm not a big believer in that. I think that like, Sam Altman can get out there and can be very, very cold and very, very distant, but still build up his own personal brand
Mm-hmm.
without necessarily feeling like he's in your face. And that's OpenAI, but you can, I imagine every individual marketer in their own domain can find a couple of people in their space that don't overexpose and don't need to like lean on these like cheap little like empathy party tricks,
Right.
but are still able to build up this like real persona and real external face of like, oh yeah, that's a human.
Right. So number one, authenticity, and I think building that brand for those few personas, consistency around that. What's the
Yeah, and I'll just say like
okay.
the authenticity part can also be a brand. Like you can have a brand that's very authentic. And I think a lot of marketers like to look at Gong and say like, oh yeah, I like know what that brand is. That's a unique brand. It has a unique style. Anthropic has done a ton of work. If you look at their pop-up shops that they have going on with their thinking caps, if you look at their font, if you look at their website, like that is a very, very authentic brand without necessarily leaning too much on their founders.
Probably way harder to do though.
Yeah, I think you can buy your way into it. I think that like you find the right branding agency and they can help you with it. Or you can really figure out what is your brand, what does your brand represent, make sure that your entire team is aligned, and just make sure that you always stay very, very deliberate about what your output looks like. It's really hard to do. Really hard to do it for a brand. Moving on to the D. Yeah, so for me, the D is a little bit more amorphous. It's domain authority.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how do you buy your way or how do you build your way or how do you somehow establish the fact that what you are putting out always reflects that you know your shit and that you know what you're doing and that you know the industry and you know the problems and you know the solutions and you understand um, if you walk up to like a cocktail table at an event and you just like try to like awkwardly insert yourself into it while like a bunch of people are standing there, that what you talk about there is something that will get them to like stop talking and listen. And that means you're not selling. It means you understand the pain points and what's keeping people up at night and how they feel like their industry is changing and can talk about it. So like, I mean, to bring it to my world a little bit, I'll go back, very, very far. If you go back like 6 years ago, 7 years ago, everybody was sure that Amazon was going to eat every single part of every business. So there was a while within the logistics space where everybody was afraid, okay, Amazon is going to create its own freight company
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to eat our lunch and they're just going to take over our entire business. So our way to kind of leverage that, to newsjack that, was we scraped Amazon's career website. At the time, like we used some guy on Upwork, we scraped their entire website and we put together like a fairly detailed analysis of what are the job titles that Amazon is hiring for in logistics? What are the degrees that they're looking for? What are the different brand characteristics of like are the different characteristics of what they're looking for when it comes to people in the logistics sector? Now this had nothing to do with Freightos. It had nothing to do with what we were selling, but we were able to say like, hey, here's what Amazon is hiring for. It looks like they're focusing a lot more on what you call last mile delivery and delivery to your doorstep, and much less on the international freight component. Let's all relax a little bit. And that inserted us into the conversation, and it built up that credibility of like, oh yeah, Freightos understands the zeitgeist. They understand what's there, and they're able to provide some type of information that gets you in there. And that is hard to do. That requires, we started off by talking a little bit about listening to your customers. You need to like understand it so well. And in the B2B space, it is so hard to understand your customers. It's so hard because they've spent 30 years working in a specific topic or a specific sector, and you just came in, you were in a totally different industry, you parachuted in and you know marketing, but you don't know logistics or automation or DevOps, and you just need to somehow get up to speed and not just reach parity with them, but actually come up with new ideas that you can inform them about stuff that they're bothered by.
I really appreciate when I work with marketers or sellers who come from the industry because they could often share the aggravating moments that like you looking at the persona, you don't experience the pressure of Black Friday or whatever their pain point is, that deep um thing that bugs them. So I definitely get that.
Yeah.
And
You know who's like really good at that? Like PR professionals. The people that are really good at PR, they have spent a lot of time flexing this muscle or kind of like building up this muscle of, I know what reporters are bothered by. I know like reporters have a tap on the market. Reporters know what people are like concerned about.
right.
And I know how to build a story for them, even though I work at a PR agency and I deal with 15 different customers. They've built that muscle up a lot. And I found historically, like going like mining PR agencies or mining people with good PR background, people who know how to pitch a reporter can usually come up to speed much faster than other types of marketing professionals.
Interesting. The other thing you said that I really very much resonates with me is coming up with something new. I think as marketers, we tend to take a topic and maybe give our opinion, but coming with raw data. We did research and this is what we found. For me, it's the best type of content. So doing those research papers where I surveyed 200, 300 people and this is what I found. I love that because I'm providing something new. And it's not just, hey, we read this article and this is our opinion about it, or hey, this is something cool that we experienced, or we went to this event and here are our 5 takeaways. So the research you did, for example, with the Amazon jobs, you put in the time, you bought something new to the market. So when you go to that cocktail table, you actually have something original and unique to tell, as opposed to, hey, everyone's talking about this. This is what I think about it. This is what my brand thinks about it.
Yeah, so that's actually brings me to the third pillar,
Oh, there.
which is data. And I've depending on the day that I wake up, I'll either say the third pillar is data, or I'll get a little bit more general and say the third pillar is an edge.
Mhm.
Like, what is something unique that you're bringing to the table? And for me, it's almost always data, but it doesn't need to be data. And for me, the coin drop for this, like I really got this. I know like the exact date. Like I was at Web Summit in Dublin before it was canceled. I was at Web Summit in Dublin like 2017, and I don't know why we went. Like, Web Summit is not the place to go showcase a logistics startup. I was like, yeah, why not? Let's do it. So we had like one of these like tiny micro booths, you know, the kind of like where you don't have a seat and you're just like kind of like you have a computer screen and nothing else there. And I was just like very, very awkwardly like standing next to it. And for some reason, people weren't stopping at a logistics startup booth. Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe because it was insane for us to be there in the first place. And I just started wandering around, and Web Summit's a very over the top summit. There's at some point I walked through this like field and they had a bunch of sheep there, and all the sheep were dyed with like the Web Summit logos. It's just like just one of these places. It's just like
Crazy.
way too over the top. And at that point I was like, this is a waste of time. I'm going home. So I went back to the hotel and I sat down. I was like, this is not the right channel. I just like burned through not a ton of money, but just like a ton of time. Like, this was going to be my channel. This is not the right channel. And I went down to the bar and I started watching American football and English and Irish bar, which was like fun. And then I went back up to my room and I banged out like the first white paper that I ever did. And white paper sounds so outdated and it sounds so boring and it sounds like it doesn't work. But the white paper was, here's how we believe digital transformation will take place over the next 4 years in the logistics space. And now, if I think about it, that didn't have enough edge, but it was new enough in the logistics sector that I was able to take it out and push it. And then it kind of built me up to my next phase, which is I need to build a better edge. I need to somehow educate my target customer even better. At that point, we were selling these like sales portals to large logistics companies. So take like a UPS or a FedEx, and we were trying to say like, hey, sell from your own website. And I tried to think like, what is the edge that I can provide? The edge that we were able to provide is we created a fake company and we tried to get price quotes from the top 20 freight companies in the world. And we just documented our experience. How long did it take for us to get the price quote back from them? How many pages was the PDF? Did it come back structured? Was it colored? Was it pretty? Was the prices accurate? You know, like what were the demeanor of the salespeople? And we just documented the experience. I mean, it was just me. Like, we just documented the experience, and I wrapped it together into a report and basically took like the data and the statistics from it, blurred it out, and emailed the VP sales, VP global sales at every one of the top 20 companies and said, hey, Mr. VP of sales at UPS, would you like to see how you do compared to your other top 19 competitors? And that's data, and that's an edge. And my hit rate there was 19 out of 20 said, yeah, of course, I'd like to see it. And a couple of people got really pissed off, but it was an edge that we were able to bring to the table related to our product, but not pushing our product, that made them say like, okay, I should listen to these people. And it's so hard to find that right edge, but when you find it, doors open.
I think a lot comes down, and you could see with all the examples that you gave, it comes down to research. You have to put in the time, right? I think very often marketers will wake up in the morning and say, this is the topic I want to write about, and immediately go write it. And I think what you're giving here is we spent time. And if it's we researched Amazon or research, right? Like we did something and spent a lot of time to become experts in this and have I think that data, the third D or the last D is data. I really like it. You need to come up with something, it almost like a dissertation or like an actual research paper that someone put out, because and now it's written differently and it's a lot more colorful, but at the end of the day, you want to bring something unique. You want something that people will then quote and reporters will quote. So it's coming up with something that has an edge.
Yeah, and it doesn't. I like the data play, and I could talk. I have like a slight obsession with data journalism and data marketing, and I'm happy to go down like a very deep rabbit hole on that one.
Okay.
But it doesn't need to be data. I think a really good example of this is Superhuman, right? The AI email client, if
Mhm.
you've ever used it. They initially built this really impressive brand by taking every 6 months to 12 months, they would take one topic and build a thesis on it. So like a thesis that they built was one of the areas where they did this was here's how we reach product market fit really quickly.
Mhm.
Here's the survey that we did in Typeform. Here's how we managed to get in front of founders. Here's how we decided what products to build and what products not to build. And it was a thesis that they built based on a playbook that they were able to share. They're targeting early stage founders. So like the content market fit there is perfect. And it worked really, really well. The second time they did it, they talked about how their philosophy of development or game or product design matches the philosophy of game design when you play computer games, where you need to have a little bit of friction and then you need to have a little bit of a win, and then you need to run into a bigger boss, and you just need to keep on like ratcheting up. And they wrote this very long white paper or like blog post, I think, at the time, and then they ended up repurposing it in a million different ways. They used PR to jack it up. They used their VCs to make more noise around it. They did a lot of interviews, podcast tours around it. But that was an edge that had really, really strong content market fit and got them in front of other people. I like the data way, but it doesn't need to be data.
Right. It needs to provide real value, and that can be data, but it'll also be a playbook or. But I think the example you gave with Amazon is not really data, right? It's more of we did research and this is what we came up with, or we have experience in this. Um, is there still room for just the regular blog that we all do? I mean, maybe you guys stopped doing it, but 5 mistakes that so and so made.
That's a great question. And we do it. We do it. And I don't know how much of it is just like, yeah, we've always done this, so we will continue to do it.
But you
and
you
ever
see the
more.
data behind it.
Yeah, and SEO. I mean, look, SEO still works, and I think 5 years from now, people will be debating if SEO is dead, and 10 years from now, people will be debating if SEO is dead. I have one of my HubSpot charts that I have built out is how many people register for our products using a Juno email address. Right, just like finding like very, very old email domains and seeing are people still using Juno? Are people still using GeoCities or whatever else like these like really old school email domains are? And you see that like month in and month out, you still get people using Juno. You'll still get people using Hotmail. Like these legacy technology, they die very, very, very slowly. So like SEO is still there, and therefore like the SEO content is still there, and over time it'll die out. But like the rumors of its death are like very, very overstated, and it's going to take a long time. So yes, you still create those, and yes, there's still people that consume content like that. It's not me, but I'm not my target market. So like you still need to create those, but the bar still becomes higher.
You see a lot of companies that do that today where they have like an agent and they'll put in a topic and a persona, and boom, there's 50 blogs for every type of persona, for every vertical, for in every language, right? And boom, it's really with one prompt, or even they write the outline, then they create the single blog, and then boom, every persona, every vertical, every geo, every and I wonder, because the knee-jerk reaction is this is amazing for a marketer. This is everything we ever wanted. But then the flip side is, am I just putting out a ton of noise?
Yeah. So my take on that is it's not bad by definition. The
Right.
question is, what's your input? And if the input together with the frontier model is able to create valuable output, then by all means, go ahead and do it. You're driving value for somebody, even though AI is just going to suck that up and spit it back to your client or to your prospect in another fashion, in some other channel. But like, one of the things that we've really pushed hard within my marketing org is to come up with what I call swipe files, which is a quick little takeout of, imagine one very short document that lives on Google Drive that says like, here's who our target market is, right? Here's what our ICP is. And then another short document that says, here are 25 data points that we've put out over the past year that really resonate. And then another one that says like, here's what our core product is. And we have like maybe a library of 15 or 16 different documents that we have. And the entire point of them is to make it easier to use AI in a structured fashion across the entire organization. So now I can let somebody who does not write on a regular basis go to that library and pull out our brand voice swipe file and pull out one of our ICP swipe files, the data point swipe file related to them, put on top of that the 2 lines of additional content that they want to create, throw all those together at AI and come out with something that is going to be 10x better than what they would have done if they would have just chatted directly with the frontier model. And I still think you need to add more. You need to have more on top of that, but the inputs matter so much, and you can scale that up, and you can do a really good job at scaling it up, especially if you're programmatically hooked into your own data sets. And that's the part where I think there's like a crazy unlock. My favorite play that we've done at Freightos historically has been not just creating data like for the reports that I talked about before, but figuring out what are 1 or 2 data points that we have inside of the organization that vary on a monthly, weekly, or quarterly basis, and how do I programmatically access them and share them out. So the story that we went through was, first I started pulling out exhaust data. I started looking at how much does it cost to ship from China to the United States, the world's largest shipping lane in the world. Would pull out the average rate and emailed it out to reporters once a month. They were interested. They started citing the data, so we scaled that up to once a week. And then as they got more interested, we started to scale it out to like 12 different lanes that we would report on. As more people got interested in it, we started to make that programmatic. We built a website, we built a front end around it, and we started to scale it up. And we hired a researcher to put a layer of research to a weekly hit that goes out together with it, that now has somewhere in the vicinity of 90 or 100,000 subscribers that open it up every week. And it's become one of our flagship distribution channels, and it happens nearly automatically. And finding that data edge, layering on top of it the authenticity that comes from somebody who can talk about the data and talk about it competently, and then bringing it together into the domain authority of like, we get freight, we can tell you what's going to happen next week using our data. That has become like a killer punch. And if you find the right wave to ride, as soon as people started talking about, when people couldn't get toilet paper in COVID, the White House ended up finding our data, and they were standing up there on the podium citing Freightos data. And you can find the right wave with the right data and the right SEO presence that will just take you anywhere.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and more companies are doing this. Like I think
Right.
the guys that are doing this really well, like Ramp does this really well, Brex does this really well, Redfin does this in the real estate sector really well, Carta does this amazing. You just have to think like, you have to run this like little internal audit. What data do I have that nobody else has? And how can I extract insights that drive value for somebody else? And usually the really good tech companies today have much better data insights. They collect data points on everything, have much better data insights than you can get anywhere from any government resource. And you need to figure out, what can I share? What's not going to tip my hand? How do I aggregate it and anonymize it so it doesn't piss off customers? But like Brex did this, Brex makes virtual credit cards. They did this amazing post where they said, here's the top 10 B2B newsletters that people are paying for. Because they have like this, like what they call L3 data. They have like the data of like, what is the individual receipt line, and they can put out data that nobody else has. And that's such an edge. And once you find that within your organization and lean into it, it is the edge that you get, in this case, data, that just like perpetuates this amazing content cycle.
Yeah, that's really important because when you at first spoke about data, I automatically thought about, you go research something and then you come back with, hey, this is what I found. But for many companies, they themselves have an endless amount and especially in the B2C world, obviously they have just endless. They could tell you how many people in Brazil act in a certain way. But even in the B2B world, you can talk about things that are super interesting to the market and to reporters and to the White House. So I guess the takeaway for us is to come back to our CRM and our whatever we use and try to do the math and then see, hey, what can we learn about user behavior, and then use that in an anonymous and the right way. But that's a huge resource.
Yeah, and editorial curation is like creativity right now. Being able to figure out what is interesting, because sometimes it's a little bit deeper than you think. Like, it doesn't matter what company you're in. If you have a specific, right, imagine you're in a specific sector and you have 500 active users, a very, very small number, 1,000 active users. Being able to say, here's the countries that scaled that came back faster from the new year. right? Here are the regions that came back faster than the new year. It doesn't matter what data you have.
Right.
Like being able to look at your user data set and understanding that, like you can come up with information, but you need to be creative and you need to think about it. And you need to have a little bit of a data mindset. You need to figure out, you need to talk to your product team and ask them, what are the 3 or 4 BigQuery data sets or Snowflake data sets that people are using most frequently? Which of our data sets is accessed most frequently by our product? And that starts to give you these hints. And then you have to get a little bit deeper and you have to ask them to export a sample of the data set, the first 20 rows of the data set in a CSV, and look at the column names. Give it to Anthropic, give it to ChatGPT and say, hey, what columns do I have? Now brainstorm with me, what kind of creative insights can I come up with? And if you get a little bit in the weeds and you're not afraid of that technical hurdle and you're not afraid of talking to somebody in product, if you can get into that area, you can come up with amazing ideas and amazing insights.
And it could also influence the product itself. I think that's something that we usually don't do enough of looking at data of what are people using, what are people not using at all, where are people dropping off, and like analyzing that to improve the product funnel. In addition to yes, we can use the data for marketing purposes, but internally, I think looking, especially if you're a SaaS product, being able to look at the customer journey, what are they using, what are they experiencing, and building the UI, and the product around the things that they like. It sounds very trivial, but I don't think
It's crazy. I want to get a little geeky here for a second, and like anybody who's not a geek, like you can feel free to tune out here. I built this like machine right now for me that I use Cursor. It's an AI developed like coder tool, and I use it a lot for writing because it has a very large context window. So I can take hundreds of blog posts that I've written and have it all there and be able to like very easily reference articles that I made and internally link and write. But one thing that I've discovered, not like over the past couple of months, is if I build 4 supporting files for myself, the first supporting file, kind of like rule file, being here's when I do a new research inquiry, here's the structure that I want it to be in. I want to have a new folder created for my hypothesis. I want you to make one file that says here's what the question is, another one that says here's how I'm going to analyze it, a third one that says here was the initial data sets, whatever. A second file that maps out what data sets I have within my organization. Right. So before I talked about a user table, but let's say for Freightos, 2 of the main data sets that we use is searches that people do for how much does it cost to ship and bookings that they end up making. So I scraped our data set and I threw it at Anthropic and I said, hey, summarize what our data set looks like and give me the business context. Then I spent an hour going through it and editing it a little bit. So first file is how I run projects. The second one is what data sets do I have. The third one is our ICP information. So who am I speaking to? And I have 10 different ICPs that are there and the tones that I use, persona documents about how I like to talk to them, what's interesting for them, what keeps them awake at night, whatever. And then the fourth thing is when I write research pieces, here's what I like the output to look like. Here's my style for writing. And then I basically got our R&D team to give me the actual service keys so that I can make API calls myself to BigQuery or to Snowflake or wherever something is stored. And then I just use Cursor and I go to Cursor and I say, hey, I now want you to make a new research project. Tell me how many people are searching before the Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year, right? And look at the past 5 years of data and come up with insights. And it runs the entire thing in 5 minutes. And I walk out with these insights that blow my mind. More than half the time, it's not something that's relevant for marketing, but is very relevant for product. But we have access with AI, the ability to write our own data queries, the ability to explore whatever we want. We have the ability to write it however we want, the ability to repurpose, and we just need to be creative.
So you get that output, and how do you use it?
Distribution is the name of the game, right? You need to figure out what is a relevant insight. I would say the insights, the ones that are okay, probably turn into a LinkedIn post.
Okay.
The ones that are a little bit longer will turn into article, a couple of repurposed LinkedIn posts. The ones that are really interesting and really meaty end up becoming part of like a much more substantial, like, hey, here's how you can change your business. Like the full, the whole 9 yards, a webinar, a video, a webinar, downloadable video, some type of like downloadable cheat sheet, the LinkedIn post, the full distribution, like gamut, together with juiced performance marketing for LinkedIn.
Right. So it's all about building that AI machine to do the research for you, to give you those insights, and then going from, hey, here's my idea, let me write something, to, hey, this is all the data, this is the research I have, this is how I'm smarter because I have the data. Now, what do I do with it? Is it a blog post or a LinkedIn post or
Exactly. And I don't think it's, people talk with like collaborating with AI as like having a man in the middle or a woman in the middle. I don't think that's the case. I think you have a man in the beginning and a man at the end. and you need to like, push in the right direction.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes you need to like curate it, you need to tweak it, you need to like know when to spike a story. But then you have a person at the end that says like, is this good? Does this actually matter? Is this written correctly? Does it bury the lead? And then you can get out there and get in front of the right people.
So what mistakes do you read a ton, well, you don't read content, but if you would read content, what mistakes do you see companies using AI in the wrong way, I guess?
If I go online and I see a LinkedIn post that says, here's how you can do your job in 5 minutes, my take is you're not doing your job right.
Mhm.
Like right now, at least right now, I think AI is, I'm personally very, very scared of AI. I think that it can take us in a lot of like really scary places. I'd be very candid and say I think that the marketing profession is in for a disaster when it comes to like actual employees. I think that, there's a building out your edge and making sure that you know how to use AI correctly is going to keep you much more relevant. Um, I think anything that can be done really, really easily, you need to remember there's like millions of other people around the world that can do it just as easily. So there's no edge. If you're doing something that somebody else can replicate just as easily, maybe you'll get a little bit of an alpha from starting it first, but it's not going to persist for that long. And that for me is like any playbook that you can easily steal and start running yourself is not going to be a playbook that you can keep on doing a long time unless it's based on some type of internal edge. And that goes back to what we were talking about before. Do you have a founder that has a unique take about how video games are related to product development? Do you have a ton of data that you can share that tells a different story? Do you have frontline insights from speaking to customers that nobody else will see? But if you don't have that edge, if you don't have that like other interesting thing on top of it, no amount of like selfies when you're at an airport and traveling to some event are going to end up like letting you build a sustainable, scalable marketing pipeline. So what do companies do wrong? Like they do the easy stuff and they don't spend the time with the editorial curation coming up with what actually matters. Where do I put my emphasis? Let me experiment. If it doesn't work, let me move on to the next one.
Right. When it comes to the future of marketing, I'm not as pessimistic because I think that the man in the beginning and end is still very important, because if we let the machine run long enough, and even if it's able to be unique and have at the end of the day, these things are machines and they put out the same. And I think what good marketing is, and you mentioned a few companies that do it really well, they're able to kind of get a little bit farther out there. There's someone that's not a machine that's doing something that we would both say it's absolutely bonkers and crazy. But I think to find that out, like, people in today's day and age are desperate for authenticity, and you see that with video, right? Like you see a super highly produced video, with a celebrity, no one wants to watch it. Some woman in her car, 1.8 million views.
Sure, but those are the outliers, right?
Right.
They're not. We can't all be the 0.5%. And like even your own like marketing plays, I would very confidently say probably 80% of the marketing experiments that we run fail, right? Like a lot of these data articles that we post. I was just looking at a couple yesterday. The last 3 that we posted have single-digit views, just like real abysmal failures.
Right.
And I mean, I think you learn from your failures and you figure out how to get better. But it is harder and harder and harder to get attention. And these companies now, like the AI is getting better and better and better. And I think we used to have these like, oh shit moments once a month when you're like, oh wow, that was like really cool that like Claude was just able to do that. And I get it more and more frequently.
Right.
Like I'm like on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, you're like, wow, that was really good. I just took a picture of this like, I don't know, this light that I'm trying to install and was able to tell me exactly what to do. And that's scary.
Yeah.
That's scary.
I think that's fair. But when we talk about content formats, ebooks, white papers, that may not be the path. Is there a format that works? Because I know video is now king and all the short form video. Do you have any guidance on what type of format we should maybe focus on or look at a little bit more?
So we experiment a lot. And, so before actually you said, I said actually in the beginning, I don't read a lot. And
Right.
I do consume a lot of content. I lean a lot into newsletters.
Okay.
So a big part of what I've done is how do I find other curators for content, right? We talked before about like these like active missile defenses, like how do you stop like all the content from coming at you? So one of my like active missile defenses in that case is other content curators that will look through lists, find the right stuff and feed it to me. And then I'll click on their links and I'll read the stuff that they find for me. Uh, for me, formats, I definitely think that owned is king. Like you need those owned audiences. I have not yet seen anything reach close to the level of ROI that you get from email marketing. Just like the ability to build your own audience and then persistently reach out to them, build the brand awareness, and eventually go in, right, the jab hook, like eventually go in for the kill there. I have never seen anything perform as well as that. And I think one of the things that we're experimenting with, so like reach out back to me in a couple of months and I'll tell you how it works. I'm trying a playbook of leaning much more into tactical guidance, right? I think these like white papers,
How-to guide.
yeah, the big thought leadership stuff, I think that that's like a little bit like you can get that from ChatGPT. That's okay. Like how to digitize your organization. It's just like a little too lofty. It's a little too high. Finding the right subject matter experts within your organization who can say like, hey, here's how we rolled out enterprise, whatever, rate management solutions to mid-market companies in the DACH region. And then saying like basically interviewing somebody for half an hour, turning that into a quick slide deck, doing a quick webinar around it or like some type of like gated video, and then having a 1-page, very, very dense download checklist of like, here's how to do it. Getting that really meaty insight, that's something that I'm a little bit bullish on right now and we're experimenting with a lot. But I think every organization is different. And I've like hosted a bunch of webinars. I can't remember the last time I joined a webinar as like a guest, but we get a ton of traction from webinars. We'll get high triple digit people attending webinars, raising their hand when we run polls, asking if people want demos, and it still works. And you got to like experiment with it. And even if it doesn't work for you, figure out what are the different things that you might like to figure out. I will say, you mentioned video before. I will say that video on social has been a little disappointing recently. Like we've been a little bit like, I know that it's supposed to work,
Yeah.
and it might be we're creating the wrong content, but yeah, we've come up against a little bit of a wall in that.
Yeah, you should check out our Marketing Academy episode about short form video. But it's funny. I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. I'm a huge webinar fan, and my move, any new company I come to, most companies will do 4 webinars a year. I'll create a machine where we're doing a webinar once a week, once every other week. It's so easy to do, and as you say, you get real numbers.
Mhm.
And people and I love live polls.
Messy. Keep it messy.
People talking, engaging, and when you have real experts, and every company has this founders, the CTO, the CPO, bring them in. It could be a Q&A session. You always get numbers, especially for your existing database. I love webinars. I think companies are not doing enough of it. Again, it depends on your space.
I totally agree. And what I mentioned before, for us, a big unlock in those webinars, because ultimately you need the revenue, right? None of us are creating media organizations. A big unlock for us was in the middle and at the end of the organization. So we'll use Zoom, right? We run a poll, and the poll says, hey, would you like to subscribe to our weekly email? And the second question is, are you interested in a demo of what we're talking about? And it's there for a minute and then it disappears. And we consistently get double-digit leads, hand raises for requests for demos from that same audience. It's just a matter of like, how are you activating that audience? Wow. And it was like this little thing. It's this little thing that we had it. We were like at the finish line for 3 years and we just never did that. So yeah, just a fun little hack that really works well for us.
That's great. Webinars do work. Yeah, I think B2B companies are having trouble with short form video. When I think about my buying process of a B2B product, very rarely do I think, oh, I saw this on Instagram Reels, or even I know LinkedIn had a second that they were very into it, and then they're not big into.
Even though their entire team is now targeting marketers with videos coming from like all the LinkedIn, like the CMO market of LinkedIn will have like videos that like they're using ads, but like nobody, I don't know, videos just seem to have died out besides LinkedIn pushing videos at me from them.
Although I assume your audience is very, what's the opposite of tech savvy, right? These are guys on boats. No,
I think every audience these days is more techie. Like it's just like generationally, like it's a generation that grew up with Netflix and now grew up with TikTok, and the people that are there know what they're doing, right? And I think every industry, once you start getting deeper, there's like really, really deep tech in almost every single industry. Like you don't work at scales of 20,000 containers on a ship without like a lot of tech behind it in order to make sure that it's optimized. And I think you're talking to humans. Like this is like the stupid trite thing, but it's still true. Like it's like human to human, and you're still talking to humans that are out there. So I think it is finding the right format, and sometimes a Facebook ad will work better than a LinkedIn ad for like very, very deep B2B marketers, right? So you just need to find the right channel and find the right format.
There you go. So to wrap things up, we spoke about. I didn't know where this conversation will go. It went to a super interesting place of kind of how to build just so many different approaches to content and how to approach content in a smarter way using AI. authenticity, using data, trying to provide that that extra value, and maybe to come full circle with the psychology at the end. I think in the B2B world, we forget that we're talking to people. So kind of maybe understand there's a person at the end and we need to provide that person value, right?
Very well said. Couldn't agree more.
So to sum things up, I want to thank our home for this podcast, Google for Startups. If you guys have a startup, Google for Startups is actually a great place to get your startup off the ground. They'll give you a lot of the facilities and the support to build it. This podcast is backed and supported by three wonderful women, Rotem, Atara, and Shachar. Thanks for all the help and for being in studio today. Eytan, this was my brain is about to explode. I think I need to watch some like stupid reality TV to bring my brain down. But so many, I'm gonna re-listen to this, take down a ton of notes, and implement a lot of what you said. Thank you so much. Hopefully we could have you back again.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Great conversation.